listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking to my ball. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, February the 18th. I am your host, Michael Leva, joined by Josh Moser of WSVN 7, South Florida's #1 news station. Josh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you? No off-season in the NFL, right? Always something going on.
There's always something going on, and with the Dolphins, there's stuff that happened over 10 years ago that still drags back up today we're going to talk about. It's never a dull moment with the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk about all the big news here the past few days. But first, before we get to that, shout out to the sponsor of today's show, Caneswear. Everyone go to caneswear.com for the best apparel for the Dolphins, the Heat, the Florida Panthers, the Marlins, and of course the Hurricanes and all of the college teams in Florida. They ship internationally as well. Caneswear.com. That's caneswear.com. And also, if you haven't signed up for Dolphins Talk Extra, what are you waiting for? Go to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. It's $3 a month. We have a private message board, bonus podcast, some about the Dolphins, some about television, music, NBA, pro wrestling, sports. All those are just yours if you are a member of Dolphins Talk Extra. It's patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. It's only $3 a month. Plus, we give away prizes. I gave away a Mercury Morse autographed jersey a few weeks ago. I gave away a few bobblehead dolls in the past few months, and I'm going to post another contest that are exclusive for extra members here in the next few days. We'll have the prize. I don't have it near me, but I got something picked out that's really cool.
Ooh.
All right. Yeah, I know. Dolphins Talk Extra. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Okay. Let's get to the big news that happened late last week. The Dolphins cut Raheem Mostert, Kendall Fuller, and Durham Smythe. Opened up some cap space. They went from about roughly 12 million over. Now they're only like roughly 5 million over. So they still got more to go. Let's start here. Did any of those three cuts surprise you?
The most surprising to me was Kendall Fuller, simply because there's no cornerback depth on this team. And I personally just haven't seen anything from Cam Smith to tell me that he's the guy, even though he was taken in the second round a couple of years ago. I understand that Kendall had, we'll call it injury problems. He had the concussion, and, when he was healthy, he was good.
2 concussions, and he ended the year with a knee injury. And he was going to make $6.4 million this year as well.
But again,
I know
fill his spot when you're already over the cap, because Teron Armstead, they still have to figure out what they're going to do with him. It looks like, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but Javon Holland's probably priced himself out at this point. And you maybe can restructure Bradley Chubb's deal. He's making, I want to say the cap hit is 20 plus this year. So
yeah, it's a lot.
Look, Raheem, I love him to death, but he's turning 33. I talked to him at the Super Bowl, and he knew. So you're going to save a little bit of money there. Simply Jaylen Wright. This is why they drafted him. Devon Achane, those are your backs. And we know Jeff Wilson Jr. is an unrestricted free agent, so he will most likely be moving on unless he comes back for nothing. But I would expect them to draft another running back in this upcoming draft, but probably in the later round. Simply, you need a third body. I would have loved them to keep Chris Brooks, especially the success that we saw him have in Green Bay. He's just something different that they don't have. And remember, they also have Alec Ingold as well. So, we'll see how the fullback position develops. And as far as Durham Smythe, I mean, look, Johnny Smith had a breakout season, the best season for a tight end in franchise history, and he deserves more money. You've got Julian Hill was better than Smith as your backup. And, Julian Hill. Yeah.
Was better than Smythe.
Better than Smythe. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I get it. Look, Smythe, was here since 2016, was the longest tenured Dolphin. Shout out Notre Dame. But, he just wasn't fitting in this offense.
He was making $3 million as a third string tight end. That's not going to fly in this league.
It's not going to fly. So they make the most sense. But the question is, what are they going to do at cornerback? What are you going to do at safety? And I mean, Mike, we've talked about this. There are so many holes right now on this team to compete.
Everything's a hole. Literally every position group has a hole.
So, you know, I mean, I would say, you know, the expectations are not high, given, you know, what's on the roster right now. So you can always push cap space. You can always push dead money, pay stuff out as a signing bonus. But it almost feels like all of the momentum from 2 years ago and the playoff run and Tua having the Pro Bowl year, it almost seems like we're on the backside of this build. And you could call it from the Laramie Tunzel, all the picks. You know, it's pretty much.
They lost that trade in the end. Look where Houston
dead at this point.
We lost that trade, which at the time of the trade, nobody thought that. But they made that trade with Houston. That year, Houston made the playoffs. And then they tore it down. Then they built it back up. At the same time, where Miami's done literally nothing. Houston literally won a playoff game, tore it down, rebuilt it, all in that window, which I often say this and fans laugh because it's true. Miami's window closed, and they often say, when was it open? Well, it was in 2022 and 2023. We missed our shot. And that's when it was open. And now they're playing a dangerous game, too, with the restructures. I will say this. Number one, I'm glad with those 3 cuts, they did not do any of them post-June 1st cuts. They have to at some point take their medicine with all these contracts and cuts to continue to kick the can down the road, to make the salary cap more of an issue in 2026, 2027. Right. At some point, you just got to take your medicine. Don't do post-June 1st. Eat all the dead money now. And plus, 1 and 2, they need the money in March, not in June. Because in March is when the players are available. June 1st, everyone who's good is signed for the most part.
Correct. But, I mean, you also have to play the Chris Grier general manager game, because how long is he going to be there? Like, you know, if this does not work with Tua paying, you know, $200 million, I understand Chris Grier's been with this team for a very long time. And the reality is they have not won a playoff game in almost 25 years. So at some point, you might have to go a different direction. I mean, you look at injuries, you know, always an issue. But I mean, the Eagles are probably your best, you know, story right now. You trade Carson Wentz, you win the Super Bowl, trade Carson Wentz, and all of the draft picks that he's had in the last 3 years in the first 2 rounds, they're all Pro Bowlers or above average starters. They all played a significant role in the Super Bowl. So, and then obviously the Saquon Barkley move. But, you know, it's hard to see the Dolphins right now, looking at the roster, looking at the salary cap space, that you're going to figure out how to beat Buffalo all of a sudden after 8 years. And the Patriots are moving in the right direction. They've got their new coach.
And $130 million to spend this year.
And then, you know, we don't know what the Jets are going to be. But the reality is it's hard to get 3 teams into the playoffs from the same division. We saw it this year. But, I mean, it's tough given what else the AFC has. And remember, the Bengals didn't make the playoffs this year. So that wild card spot, which is realistically what the Dolphins would be shooting for.
Tough competition.
You know, it's here we go again, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's been the story of the Dolphins. And it's no, you know, you look at the Eagles and everything they've accomplished. They win a Super Bowl. They've been to a few Super Bowls of late. And, you know, when they ever need to make a trade, who do they call? Miami last year with Jaylen Wright, the whole thing with Waddle when they went down to 12, they went back up to 3, that whole thing, or 6, whatever. The Eagles, you know, I'm not saying, you know, everyone's got a farm team. I think we might be the Eagles. We need to make a trade. Call Miami. We can pull the wool over their eyes one more time. And I hate to say it, but that's kind of how some people feel. Now, here's the numbers on Chubb, actually. I just pulled them up real quick. Now he counts this year on the cap for $28 million. Yeah. And if it's a post-June 1st cut, they would open up $19.5 million. Now, look, as I said about the post-June 1st cuts, I'm not for it, but that might be one case where one of them you can do there. Like, I would understand if they did that one. If they cut him pre-June 1st, it only opens up $1 million, and you got $27 million dead. Yeah, so that either has to be a restructure, or that's a post-June 1st cut.
Right. But why would you restructure if you're Bradley Chubb coming off of the torn ACL?
Well, he's got no incentive to. Yeah.
I'm not.
So that's probably a post-June 1st cut, if anything. Or they might actually need him because
Yeah, they
Jalen
do.
Phillips. Yeah, exactly. Jalen Phillips got hurt, I think in October with an ACL. We all think he'll be back by week 1. He might not be back till week 5. We don't know. We don't know. And I know he's working hard, what he wants to do and what he's trying to do. But that's an ACL injury after an Achilles. He might not be ready week 1. So we have to factor. And if he's not, then you're back with Chop and who? Nobody. Well, if you got Chubb, at least you got Chubb. So there's that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Now, who might be next? I got 2 names.
Okay.
One you mentioned, Alec Ingold. No, he has no guaranteed money on his deal, which makes him easier to cut, and that would clear up $1.6 million there. And look, it stinks. Everyone loves the guy. He's good at his job, but again, they're in a numbers nightmare here, so that might be something. And the other one, Jake Bailey, no guaranteed money, would free up $1.975 million. Now, no offense to good old Jake. I know he's a great holder and all, but I ain't paying a punter $2 million. You can get one cheaper.
Yeah, and I mean, you can make the argument. We've seen it in recent years where good kickers, I think Jason Sanders on the books for $4 million. Now, granted, he's been phenomenal. He was the AFC Player of the Month, I think, twice this year. But you can go get a rookie, or you can go get someone off the street for $700,000 that you can make the league minimum. That's going to free up over $3 million in cap space. I went through this with Mason Crosby, where he was just making too much money in Green Bay, even though he was at the top of his game. And they just are like, we need to put money elsewhere. So I don't see the Dolphins moving away from Sanders. Let me just put it out there. But if you're talking about saving more money by moving away from him, you could get more money from them by cutting Ingold and Bailey. But there has to be a restructure. And frankly, Tyreek Hill would be a restructure to me at the top of the list. And you just don't know if he's willing to do that. And,
that's a big roll of the dice for other reasons too.
Yeah. The other issue is Teron Armstead. I was
just going to mention him. Yeah.
Because he's on the books, I want to say, for roughly 20 as a cap hit.
He's on the books for 2025 for 22.8.
Yeah.
If they just cut him right now today, that would open up $4.267 million, and they would eat $18 million, unfortunately. If they did post June 1st again, which I wouldn't do, they would free up $15 million, and they'd only eat $7 million this year.
Right. So, I mean, he may retire. He said he was
played
feeling
15
good
games last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're hoping that he can play 10. I mean, when he's out there, he's a phenomenal left tackle. And then you hope that Austin's finally healthy on the other side. And we've talked about the issues at guard. But, I mean, you got to hit on your draft picks, and especially your first rounders. And you did that with Chop. You've just really got to hit, and you've got to develop that culture. And, we've been talking about a culture change. You lose a guy like Teron Armstead in the locker room. You lose a guy like Alec Ingold, if we're going to throw it out there. Like, these are your leaders that were holding this team together. And when you have a player-led head coach like Mike McDaniel, you need, it to come from somewhere else. And that was kind of Fangio's gripe. And, he bounced, just won a Super Bowl. But I think an underrated non-move is getting Anthony Weaver back as defensive coordinator. That is a huge, huge move. But yeah, this team, it's like we're trying to figure out even what to say. And I think that the front office is in the same situation. It's just like we're in purgatory right now. And, what is the best case scenario?
Here's the elephant in the room, which I know they are probably trying to figure out themselves, actually, because the elephant in the room is when they gave two of that deal, it was one deal, how it was set up to be restructured at times, open up cap space down the road. What they didn't bank on is this guy, of course, missing 6.5 games, being hurt, to where now they have to question, if we restructure him, that opens up $19 million. If they give him the max restructure, opens up 19, solves all their cap problems. Literally, that one move solves every cap. Don't worry about Chubb. Don't worry. It solves all their cap problems. The problem is you are stuck with him on the cap till 2029. And I know that is too much of a risk for anybody, where right now, if you don't touch it, after 2027, you can have a pretty much a clean cut and say, you go your ways, we're going ours. If things continue. So the restructure would solve all their problems and make life easy for everybody. And they go out there and be very active in March and sign a guy or two who's got like a little bit of a name. But if they do that, You bet. I mean, are you going to bank on Tua staying healthy? I ain't.
Yeah, but here's the other question. If it goes south, is the general manager and the head coach still here in 2029?
That's where the owner has to have guard. This is where that's where the owner has to step in, have someone else has to have his ear aside from Grier. And here's my actually hope. Here's my hope. Here's my hope. And this is going to sound crazy. This is my hope, Josh. Play along. Remember that report, probably a month or two ago, that Chris Grier almost retired and went to a senior advisor, senior VP role? This guy has been here for 20-something years. Self-preservation should be his middle name. He's got to know. Don't let it get so bad to where I don't get that senior VP role, which I'm just going to retirement job. Just don't blow it up to the point where he wants me gone. Just keep things good enough to where at the end of the year, he can fall in the sword and say, you know what? Let's hire a new GM. I'll be this. If he destroys it, he'll lose that job. So, and I don't think he wants that.
Yeah,
it's my hope.
It's hard on this one because Chris Grier in NFL circles is so well respected, and I think that's what has allowed him to stay. And if he were to leave this job, he would be swooped up very quickly. And I guess the question is if not Chris Grier, who better? And
I can come on. Look,
you can name a couple. You can
name a few because his resume is pretty bare.
Sure. So, I think that's what this year is going to be because, we talked to Mike McDaniel and Tua are tied. We truly believe that Mike McDaniel is the perfect coach for Tua. Now it's up to Tua to stay healthy. But, as far as Mike, and this offense, especially without all of the shiny pieces, because of the salary cap, it's can you make a counter move because defenses have figured out your offense. And, that's where everyone needs to see him take a step. And I know that he wants that out of himself. But yeah, I asked Chris Grier this question at the end of the season press conference. And I phrased it along the lines of based off of what is in the AFC, knowing that you're going to have to beat Lamar Jackson, a Mahomes, a Burrow, a Josh Allen to get to where you want to go. Do you have the style of player on your roster that is capable of going on the road in the playoffs and go win playoff games? And he basically said that he feels that they do, but for some reason in the cold weather, they just shit the bed, essentially. So,
it's a mindset.
I don't know if he's being politically correct with me, or if you could say, look, we don't have enough. But
that's probably that's probably the truth, actually.
But Mike McDaniel's face when I asked the question was he's like, And I talked to him after the fact. But yeah, Jordan Brooks is kind of that interesting player where he's very good on the field, but he's a very different personality than the players in the locker room. And I don't know, you've covered the game for a long time. I've been doing this for 15 years. You could have the most talented roster on paper, but if the guys don't get along and if the guys aren't self-led, you don't maximize your team. And Jalen Hurts is the perfect example of this. Yep. But on the Dolphins, who is that guy?
It was Wilkins. They let him walk out the door. And prior to that, it was Landry. If you want to go back further, they've had these guys. They don't value those guys. They never have, and that's a big mistake.
Right. You have Jalen Ramsey. He's Gold Jacket is his nickname. He's a surefire Hall of Famer, but that's just not his personality. And you're not faulting him for that, but it's how do you find those guys? How do you get those guys in the locker room? And we haven't. That's to be seen, and it kind of makes sense because, shoot, you look at Robbie Hunt, the year that he had. I know that he priced himself out, Pro Bowler. I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, but here you have Andy Dalton. They wanted to bring him in as a backup. They didn't want to spend them, but now he just re-signed again in Carolina. So it's. You can use South Florida and the number one rated team as an A, best facility, best living, no state tax.
I think that's part of the problem. It's too nice.
Yeah, but maybe.
A little too comfortable. Everyone's a little too comfortable down there, I think.
Yeah. So
start from the front office to the coaches to the players. You need a little grit sometimes, and you need things to not be comfortable. You need it, but I get it. Those are things that are positives that you can use to lure players. And if it's a quality player who's not going to want them, but at the end of the day, like with the draft, that's probably their best chance to find guys like this because you can talk to the college coaches, you can talk to the assistant coaches in college and see which guys truly love the sport down to its core. And those are those types of guys. Once they're going for their second contract and stuff, it's a different world. They're thinking about finances and family and how much can I make, how many years I got left in the league. You got to get them right out of college and pretty much have them beat that guy coming into the league when they're hungry, fighting for their first big payday.
Right, but you need the veteran establishment to guide those guys. And I mean, like Kyle Van Noy didn't have a good season down here, and then he went on to be a Pro Bowler again.
He had like 10 plus sacks or 12 sacks.
You know? Yeah. So, I mean, they basically said, you're not good enough to be here. And, you know, Landon Roberts would be another, you know, thumper on defense. And he's like, you know, I'm going to play for Tomlin. Like, you know, but you need some of those type of guys. But
that's the thing. They've had them. They don't value them. And that's on them. They have to recognize we need a couple guys like this. And yes, you know what? He might, and I'm just making up a number, might not be worth $4 million a year. But you know what? I'm going to give him 3.84, pay him close to that because what he does in the locker room and what he does for the rest of the team makes up for what he might lack on the field at this point. I'm not saying go crazy and overpay him, but a few million here more because that has value that they are so driven by analytics and the human side they don't seem to have a grasp of.
Right. I mean, I guess the easiest comparison for people in Miami, that's Udonis Haslem on the Heat before he retired. That's Kevin Love right now on the Heat, a Hall of Famer. So there is value in that. You could argue that Calais Campbell was that last year. We don't know if he's going to be back. And he had a phenomenal season. But, you know, this team, in my opinion, if I'm, you know, Drew Rosenhaus, I'm asking for more money for Zach Sealer. I'm asking for more money for Jonnu Smith for his Pro Bowl appearance. You know, but
and Hill.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Tyreek needs to play ball. I mean, look, Tyreek had a bad year. We've heard multiple stories about this wrist situation. He told me at the Super Bowl that he's having a procedure here in the next couple of weeks. So we heard ligaments. Then he said he broke his wrist. So, you know, I know it's the left wrist, and that's it. But I know that he wants to be here long term. I can firmly say that.
Here would be my question for him or his agent. If Tyreek Hill is not named a captain in late August, is that going to be a problem? Because if that's going to be a problem, then that's a problem that they can know about now. Because I don't know how I mean, he can stay. I mean, obviously he can stay and all stuff. But if they name him a captain again, there's going to be a lot of media saying stuff. There's going to be other players saying stuff about that. We saw what Ryan Clark said to him at the Super Bowl there in that little show thing. Like, if they name him a captain, that's going to raise some eyebrows after how the season ended. And I'm not saying he's totally in the wrong. He said what he said. But if they don't name him a captain, if he's not voted a captain, is that going to be a problem? And I don't know. You don't know, but that's going to be the first hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek's a prideful guy. So, you know, I would say it'd be a bigger issue if Tua was not named a captain because that happened a couple of years ago.
I know it did. That was a big issue. The only quarterback in the league that wasn't a captain was him. It was just like...
So, you know, but again, like, we're probably talking about, I don't know, like 10-7 at best, you know?
I agree.
Like, you can try to sneak into the playoffs. Like, again, like, it's like Groundhog's Day. Like, it almost doesn't matter what you do. And, you know, I don't know.
I agree.
For me, it's like I'm sick of spinning my head on it.
Think about me having to fan this team forever. All right. Let's talk quick about the backup quarterback here. Yeah. Andy Dalton. Why that's kind of news is because it was reported by the Miami Herald that when Tua went down in week 2, the Dolphins tried to trade for Andy Dalton back in September. Couldn't make it work. And Andy Dalton now is signed. So everyone thought, well, he's going to be on the market this offseason. Miami clearly has interest. Well, they can't. He just signed a 2-year extension or a new 2-year deal with the Panthers. So he's off the table. I'm going to read you the guys. One of these guys is going to be the backup quarterback, unless they pull off a miracle. And let me know if one or two of them pique your interest. If you're like me,
okay, I've got one.
6'1". Okay, I'm sure it's going to be top one on the list. Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's the one most people think. But Chip Kelly, who loves Marcus, is not with the Raiders, and they don't have a starter. So that's something that's probably their main competition. That in Washington, if they want to keep him for Marcus. But here's some other names: Jameis Winston, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Joe Flacco, Cooper Rush, Trey Lance, Drew Lock, Taylor Heineke, Easton Stick, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. I'll throw in there, but I think they're both going to start somewhere next year. So I think those are low percentage. Two more: Mason Rudolph and Jimmy Garoppolo. To me, with the exceptions of Fields and Wilson, you can put all those names in the hat, 6 one, half dozen the other. I think they're all virtually the same. What it can't be is Tyler Huntley. That's what it can't be. So what are your thoughts on any of those names, aside from Marcus Mariota, stand out?
The one that I think would be actually a decent fit, and you might be shocked by this, is Zach Wilson.
That's my guy. That's if you told me I could get anyone on that list, I want Zach Wilson. He's Sam Darnold 2.0, I think.
I think that Mike McDaniel
could fix him.
He would be my choice. Now, let me put some asterisks on this, because if Tua goes down, like we saw this season, write it off. Like, let's just be real.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but Zach Wilson would be my personal choice. He's played in the division. I think that there would be something about wanting, I just think he and Mike McDaniel would be a really, really good fit. I also know that his personality, he would get along with Tua, which I think is very, very important. I think that's underrated. You go back to him, he's in the same draft class as Jaylen Waddle and Jalen Phillips. I remember he was picked just ahead of him in Cleveland at the draft. We were there. So,
he's picked number 2 overall. Yeah,
the talent's there. And
he won more games with the Jets than Rodgers did, and he didn't have guys like Adams and Mike Williams. He won more games with the Jets than Rodgers did.
He would be my first choice. Talking to Jameis Winston at the Super Bowl, he wants to be a starter. Now, he's got to stop throwing interceptions. But, the real question is like, what is Tennessee going to do at number 1? Obviously, they need a quarterback. Obviously, the Giants need a quarterback. I think Cleveland's in the market.
Cleveland needs a quarterback.
We know that that's not going to be Jameis.
And the Raiders and the Jets.
Yeah, and look, Russ makes sense to go to the Raiders because of Pete Carroll. Don't know if it's going to happen. Aaron Rodgers is an interesting name. I personally don't think that he would take a backup role, but I would love Aaron Rodgers as a backup. He doesn't need any more money, but I think he wants to be a starter if he's going to play. I think there's no reason to go be a backup to tarnish your reputation. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Kirk Cousins. I think he would be,
he might be Cleveland. He could be Cleveland. I could see him.
I think he's probably going to end up as a starter. Zach Wilson would be my under the radar type of person. Rudolph, I just don't see in this style of offense. I know that he was here and he beat the Dolphins last year in Miami.
Jimmy Garoppolo's got ties to the staff.
Yeah, but at this point,
I'm not in love with him. Trust me, I'm not in love with him. But I could see that though, just for that reason alone.
Sure, but we need the downfield pass, and that's not his game.
I agree.
But he's good looking, and it's South Beach, and press would go crazy, and you could bring back Zach Wilson in the MILF stories, in Miami with all the divorces.
Hey, that would be up to. I'll tell you though. But Zach Wilson reminds me so much of Sam Darnold. Picked by the Jets. Horrible situation. Just a horrible situation for both of them. And once they were, and for Sam, once he got out of there, I know he went to San Francisco for a bit. He went to the Panthers, then he found a spot with the Vikings. But ever since he left there, gradually improved along the way. Now he's going to get a huge payday this offseason to start for somebody. And I think Wilson, same thing. Get him away from the Jets. Get him out of the chaos of the media of New York and everything going on there. Put him this past year with the Broncos, where I don't think he played, but whatever. Like, put him somewhere else in a way better situation with no pressure on him. And I think he could be fixed. Mac Jones, kind of the same thing. I'd rather have Zach than Mac, but same thing with Mac Jones. I think he could be fixed as well. And remember, San Francisco loved Mac Jones. If San Francisco liked him, odds are Mike McDaniel liked him as well. So I could see that one again. But Marcus Mariota, same high school as Tua, same island as Tua. I know there's an age difference, but I'm sure that's probably one of those guys. I'd be fine. I'm fine with pretty much any of them. But it just can't be Huntley.
Dual threat. The dual threat aspect.
Legs.
And if you're going to run the outside zone, that's just another element. where you could be, baby Lamar. I mean, that's what Tyler Huntley was. He just isn't him. I mean, I know he's from here, and look, it's hard to learn an offense, especially as complicated as Mike McDaniel's in 2 weeks. So it's not like he was, it's just a tough situation to walk into.
He was thrown to the wolves, and it was a tough situation. But even if he did have time, he's still not the right. He's not the right guy for number 2. No, he's not the guy. Okay, last question, last topic, I should say. The whole Jonathan Martin, Richie Incognito stories come back to the surface after, I think, 10, 11 years, whatever it was, 2013, I believe. This one's getting a lot of attention, as it should, especially in South Florida, because I know you weren't here at the time. That's one of those stories I often say, kind of like with Flores, goes beyond sports, where you got people from Good Morning America, Fox News, CNN, not just the sports people at the media session.
Well,
everyone. Mike Wallace, I think, was one of the first people to ask questions. Like when you got Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes, whoever, in the media room, that's, you're going to have a bad day. That's not sports people asking questions. So I guess, what's your thoughts on this whole thing, the whole situation, coming back to light? Because I have thoughts, but you go first.
So my first question is, why now? And I don't know the answer to that. I want to know why all of a sudden, Martin's going to.
Why do you agree to the interview? Yeah,
correct. Like what changed? The way that I read the interview, it's almost as if he's been filled with guilt for this long, and now he's finally at peace. Now that he's at Wharton and he's made a ton of money in Bitcoin, where he's essentially established himself outside of football, where he feels comfortable talking about this. But at the same time, you're a high draft pick. You went to Harvard Westlake High School, which is a phenomenally academic high school. You went to Stanford. Your father is a professor at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and your mom's an attorney. You're an educated, smart person. And for you just to walk out of the locker room and basically not come back and not tell the Dolphins or the staff anything, I can't rationalize that behavior. And I also can't rationalize the coaching staff of Joe Philbin and the front office. Like, you got to talk to this guy. And sometimes, parents are out of control. I mean, we understand that, the mom was the one that pushed us towards the media. And, but this is one of those situations where you got to keep everything in house. And now, like, imagine if this happened now with social media. Like, social media was not what it was.
It was infancy. It wasn't like it is now. Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing, like, learning about this, I was not here at the time, but Stephen Ross, you hire Wells, the independent investigator, whatever. Like, you basically just threw up your hands and said, I want plausible deniability. Like, you guys deal with this. And to me, that was a huge mistake. But look, I understand both sides, and I understand the investigation. You want to protect football. You want to, the locker rooms, they are what they are. And the people in the circles, they know it exists. But for the novice fan, like, they know that all of this stuff exists too. And I'm not saying that Incognito was a choir boy, and he's the first to tell you, like, I wasn't. But this is the culture of the NFL. The other question, so, like, it is what it is. And the other, question that I would have is, does Incognito have any grounds for legal action? Because this man's life was essentially ripped apart. He lost more than $10 million in salary. And, he was basically slandered into saying that he was this racist, which, you hear Richie Incognito, like, in the public eye, you could call it defamation. But I wonder if he actually has any power to go back to the league and say, I got suspended for something that I didn't do. You made me out to be the scapegoat. What the hell?
Well, I might have an answer to that, because here's why. Richie Incognito deserves 100% a total apology from everyone involved. He was treated wrong. Now, here's where Richie needs to be careful. Now, look, if he wants to try and sue, go for it. Have at it. Why?
I don't know if he's even got grounds to do it.
I think if he meets with a lawyer, they'd probably tell him it's going to be tough to win, and here's why. That Wells investigation wasn't just Martin, Richie, and everything happened there. It was everything happened with the Dolphins in general. And Richie And John Jerry said some things, which I will not even repeat here, although I have the quotes in front of me,
The
to an
voicemail was
Asian
bad.
trainer. And like that makes Richie go from right now, take your apology, take it. But if you push this further, people are going to start to bring that stuff up. And if it takes this to court, that's going to be Exhibit A. And you're going to go from, and you're really going to, rip off the scab. And it's going to come back up. Some of the things you said that wasn't to Martin that are reprehensible, and you're not the sympathetic guy anymore. If he can just take a few bows this week, take your apologies, and then let it go, he'll be remembered as a sympathetic guy who was wronged. If he pushes this, that's where it's going to become chaos. Now, look, I get it. He lost a lot of money, and he might want to push it. I'm not in his shoes, but that's what's going to happen. That all those quotes.
It's a smear game. You're not going to beat the 800-pound gorilla that is the league. It's unfortunate. I mean, that's corporate America. It is. Yeah. But I'm just, the timing to me is the most interesting, and I would say that, I don't know. I'm not his mom. I'm not Martin's mother, June. And, I also don't know, we're only hearing this side. I wasn't here at the time. But look, the football locker room, the locker rooms in general, across all sports, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And it's definitely been cleaned up simply because people have cell phones and you're able to record stuff. I mean, there's stories from back in the day. You talked to all that. It was part of the culture. And I'm not saying the culture was right or wrong. It was what it was. And as a football player growing up your entire life, you knew that. But I don't know, now when we talk about mental health and, we have a lot more tools even 10 years later where, you can talk about emotions and, it's more mainstream at the forefront, where back then, or certainly my father's generation, like as a man, like you rub some dirt on it, you get back out there, you push it down and you go.
That's gone.
So, it just makes the Dolphins look bad again.
That's the thing. Like the story.
Yeah.
And two things. One, you're right about the locker room culture, because every former player I've spoken to, for the most part, says this in some roundabout way. The one thing about the locker room, two things you remember. A, what happens there stays there. And B, never talk about another player's money. Your money's your business. His money's his business. Don't get involved or talk about it, because that's not your business. I know, but that's what they say. Never talk about another player's money. That's not your business. But what comes from this is, for the Dolphins, Martin probably was, he's probably been asked to be interviewed 100 times. Like he said, this guy, I've asked him for all these years. He finally said yes. For him, he probably thought, let me do the interview. Let me show the world how great my life is and how I got past this. The mistake Martin made is he got a little too loose with his lips, because that whole interview is fine, except for that one line about the mother. And if that wasn't in there, people would read, oh, he moved on from this. His life is fine. Happy for Jonathan. He found peace. Like, nobody would have went back to this story would have just been around for a day or two. When he started saying, my mother forced me into it, like, why did you go down that road in this interview? Like he had to control. He didn't have to say that, but he said it, and that's where the whole thing went sideways. If he just said, I'm in college, I got this degree, I'm going to Warren, crypto, my life is good, I'm happy now, I found peace, and just leave it at that, fine. That's just a kind of a lame interview, honestly.
But then why give the interview in the first place?
I agree. I wouldn't have done it.
Like, I don't know. Like, to me, the only thing that I could think of is that he's been truly harboring this the entire time, and it's gotten to a point where this has messed him up so much inside that he needed to get it off his chest. And I mean, I'm not in his position. I'm a white male. I don't know. But I actually like the fact about the mom, and I like the fact that he said, look, it put a rift between them, and then you had the father confirming, but in my opinion, the mom declined the interview. So if you wanted to go down that road, which, you're bringing up, like, I feel like June needed to be a part of this, and they should have done it together. And if you really wanted to do this,
there's a no-win situation. I don't know why he said yes to this. This is a no-win situation. We'll see how much, I don't know. Richie he's keeping this going. He's going after Florio and Schefter and ESPN and Stephen A. Like, he's going after all of them, which, fine, whatever.
Well, I mean, look,
they're, for the most part, they're not responding except for Florio. But if this story is either going to die by like Saturday, or it's going to just get a second wind and continue to go.
Yeah, I think it's going to die. I mean,
I think so too.
Again, like if this weren't the Dolphins, if this were the Cowboys, a little different.
49ers or somebody with a more
but
prestigious franchise. Yeah.
Again, it's, it speaks to not having your house in order, and that just doesn't happen in championship organizations. And there's always shit that happens, but the good teams, you never find out about it.
Yep.
And like you said, what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. But
when it doesn't, this is what happens when it doesn't. You get Mike Wallace and others there.
Yeah, this one's different. This was
like when I look back at the last 10 years of Miami, there's been a lot of instances. You had the coach with the cocaine on the thing. You got this one. Brandon Marshall, even his final year, there was a lot of chaos around Marshall with him and his, I don't know if his wife or his girlfriend. There's a lot going on there with him being stabbed in the leg, or he stabbed her in the leg, or she stabbed him. Something happened with the stabbing. There was a lot with Marshall where Ross said, I can't have him on the team anymore. This one is top of the list. Even if you want to go back further with Ricky, that was a nightmare. But you look back at that now, people left marijuana. Like, who the hell cares? But back then, 2004, that was a big deal. Eva training camp totally took the whole season. Wannstedt lost his job for that. That was bad. But this one is probably, this one and Flores are like 1 and 1A atop of the list. It really is. Those two are the big, because those ones transcended sports. When
it goes back to
Flores
race.
with the racial issue, lawsuit, that's where you get Fox News, Good Morning America. That's where you get those showing up for that. And this one as well was a hot button one, because everything around that time picked up around can't be a bully. Don't be a bully. Can't be a bully.
Everything's blending together. Did Flores get any head coaching interviews this cycle?
Yes, he did. I forget with who.
Are you going to name this guy a head coach when he's suing the league? I'm just being like,
that's why he'll never. That's why he won't get the day. Now that lawsuit was sent to arbitration, meaning whenever eventually it is resolved, we're not going to know how it was resolved because everything in arbitration is sealed. But
I think that might take years. If he were to do it, I think it'd probably end up in the same situation.
Same type of arbitration. So everything's sealed. That's what the NFL loves, because then nothing gets out. But once that's resolved, that's when he'll probably become head coach again. Until then, it's tough for any owner, because you don't know what day this is going to become in the news again in the next year or two, however long this could take. And it could take years. So, he did have a couple. I forget with who at top of my head right now.
Wild time.
Wild time. So never boring in Miami, Josh. As you've known, you've been here long enough now. It's never boring in Miami. And I'm sure we'll hear about more news here because, look, it's February 18th. March will be here before we know it, start of the new league year. And they got to be under the cap on that first day. And they really got to be not way under, but they got to be not at the cap if they want to sign anybody when the next day they start free agency and stuff. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about in the coming weeks.
I do have one more question, if that's okay.
Go for it. Absolutely. I'm
simply
free all
because
night.
of our listeners that are watching this live. Today's the first day that a team can franchise tag a player. To me, really, the only person that would make sense would be Javon Holland. I personally do not think that this is going to happen. I think he's priced himself out. I think he's going to test the waters. Curious your opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it'll happen. Would it stun me if it happened? No. But here's why I always say, what do we look at Chris Grier's history? What does he value?
Exactly.
The premium positions. Safety, not a premium position. Like Hunt at guard, not a premium position. Like Wilkins at end wasn't a premium position. Those guys are no longer here. The guys he pays are Waddle, Austin Jackson, offensive tackle, Tua, he'll pay. He doesn't pay safeties, including, if you want to even just go back recently, to Brandon Jones, someone else he drafted around 3, let him walk. Holland, I think my fear is this, though, because what we saw last year where he let these guys walk, and then he's like, well, we can't sign anybody big because we're going to get compensatory picks in 2026. And I got to protect the compensatory picks. No more compensatory pick games. One, it bit you in the butt with Wilkins because everyone thought it'd be a third. He got hurt. Now it's a fourth. That's number one. So it didn't even work out really. And 2, who cares about picks at the end of round 3 or the end of round 4 or the end of round 5? Screw that. Just sign good players. Don't worry about compensatory picks. Yeah. Sign good players. I hope he doesn't do that game where I'm going to let Holland go, but I can't sign the whole. He even admitted for the backup quarterback. They wanted to sign somebody, but they couldn't because it would have cost too much to hurt the compensatory picks. Who cares? Who about compensatory? You know who's a compensatory pick? Channing Tindall was picked in the compensatory pick range. Like, you're letting that
man
dictate.
never started.
The man never started. He's going to be cut too. That's another name.
Players on that team.
Yeah.
All of them are on the freaking Eagles.
Georgia. All the Eagles. We got the one guy who can't play from Georgia. I mean, it's like
great measurables, but he couldn't get on the field of Georgia. Like in the third round.
Like Tarzan played like Jane. I mean, he has every skill that you want. That just couldn't play. But yeah, you can't let stuff like that dictate your team. Like if we had Andy Dalton and down goes Tua, and Andy Dalton goes 3-1, and who would have cared about the compensatory pick? They might not won a playoff game, but they would have been there.
Red Rifle, baby. Great name.
Yeah, it really is. All right. Follow Josh on social media at The Mo's Knows. Watch him, WSVN 7 South Florida. We'll be back, of course, in a week or so. Well, when news breaks, Josh is usually here with me, and I'm sure we'll have another show later this week. Yeah. Everyone
DCC,
go to the website.
Dolphins Challenge Cancer Ride this week.
Dolphins Challenge Cancer.
We will be there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Ian, hopefully he's healthy enough to go because he goes every year, and he does have a team with the shirts, and I sponsor the shirts for him. So I know he's got the shirts. I just hope he's healthy enough. Ian, if you're there, I'll talk to you. I'm going to talk to you. What am I telling everyone for? Yes. Everyone, have a great rest of your Tuesday night. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you again after a while.